One of the paradoxes of leadership is that you can be surrounded by people all day and still feel alone. The higher you rise in leadership, the fewer true peers you have, the fewer people who really understand the pressures you're under. And with that shrinking circle, the weight of leadership decisions grows heavier. Every choice carries a cost, and someone will always feel the impact of those decisions. There's a lot at stake here. And while your team may be committed, they rarely see the full picture, which means they don't always understand the weight that you're carrying. That gap leaves leaders feeling unseen. I'm raising my hand because I know that feeling. And over time, pulling back starts to feel like the safest option. We tell ourselves that we're protecting the team, moving fast, avoiding drama. But I think in reality, if we're brutally honest, we're actually protecting ourselves. And that distance between ourselves and our teams leaks into the way that we lead. Fewer updates, fewer questions, fewer invites into the why behind what we're doing. Without knowing how to properly include our teams in our leadership, withholding what's really going on for us seems the only option. And this drives disconnection with our team and eventually leads to burnout for us as leaders.
It's true. And this is one of the really difficult things about being a leader is that few people understand what's actually going on for us, because on the surface, leadership looks like having a voice and power and authority, but behind the scenes, it often feels so lonely because of things like confidentiality and context and the realities that the higher we ascend in our leadership, the smaller our circle gets, and we have less and less built-in support, right? We don't have a lot of peers around us. So the real challenge becomes, how do we keep from drifting into that isolated space? And instead, how do we build the kind of trust and connection that lets us share that load and our lives in healthy ways?
There's a tension, Dawn, that just kind of came into my brain as you asked that question that I think most, if not all of our listeners know, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at home in our significant partnerships or relationships, whether that's with our kids as they get older and older. But that's a tension that I hope that we can begin not only to identify and call out, but maybe offer some ways to navigate, because that tension is unavoidable if we want to partner with other people in any area of life. So let me start by saying this. At its core, isolation isn't usually a conscious choice. It's what happens when the role that we have outpaces the support system around us.
Yes.
Leaders sit in rooms where the hardest calls get made, but they can't always share the full story with their team. And quite frankly, sometimes they shouldn't.
Right.
But over time, that gap leaves us carrying the weight alone, which makes it incredibly tempting to retreat, to isolate, to withdraw, which leads to disconnection. Now, that retreat shows up in ways that we don't always notice at first. Subtle. We shorten updates. We stop inviting questions from our team members or others around us. We share less of the why, the motivating force behind the decisions we're making, and whether it's leading a team or building a business or leading a family. We stop sharing the why, which I really do believe is the motivating force that keeps people moving in a direction. The problem is those small withdrawals begin to add up. Teams start to feel the distance, and when people don't understand, they do what we call gap fill. They fill in the blanks.
Right.
And usually when we gap fill, because we don't have clarity from our leaders, we normally fill that space with pejorative, negative, or suspicious projections.
Yeah.
Trust erodes, and once trust cracks, isolation compounds even further. And before long, leaders aren't just carrying the weight of decisions, they're also carrying the weight of disconnection. And that's when burnout begins to set in, not just because the work is heavy, but because we're carrying it without any support.
That's right. I was just talking with some of our clients about this week, about how our minds are meaning machines. And when we don't have all the information, it is more comfortable for our brains to make up uncomfortable half truths or
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
not truths
Oh, yeah.
than it is for our brains to sit in the unknown.
Yeah.
And we all have this negativity bias. And so this is a real reality that leaders face as they're trying to navigate this. They can't share necessarily. They have fewer people they can share. And so what are their teams doing? They're creating meaning
Yep.
where there might not be any.
That's right.
They're
That's
creating
right.
stories.
That's right.
And the problem is when we reach that point of having to withdraw to kind of protect ourselves, it's not just us. It starts to shape our entire culture of our team because people mirror their leader, right?
That's right.
If we're withdrawn, they pull back too. If we're guarded, they get guarded, which means figuring out how to overcome this isolation isn't just about our health as a leader. It's about the health of our whole team. So obviously this is important and it's also complicated.
Yep.
So what do we actually do? What do we do, Eric?
That's the question. Well, here's where we start. Isolation shrinks. We start to move away from isolation back into community, which is what we're hardwired for, when trust grows. So that's why we teach the trust code, one of our core 8 of our leadership tools from our leadership operating system that helps us to understand that all human beings have a fundamental need to feel seen, heard, and valued.
Yes.
And where we as leaders can experience that appropriately with our own team members, we feel trust towards them.
Mm-hmm.
And where our team members are able to feel seen, heard, and valued by us, then trust grows there as well. And so these are the 3 questions. Do people around us feel seen? Do they feel heard? Do they feel valued? But even for us as leaders, do I feel seen, heard, and valued? And are we creating the appropriate environments in which that can happen without crossing the proverbial line of oversharing and dysfunctional
right.
vulnerability? Because that does exist.
Let me say for our listeners, if you want more of a deep dive on trust code, you can go back. We have a whole episode, season 1, on trust code. But what I love about that tool is it takes this really like ambiguous concept of building trust and it makes it practical and repeatable with some simple handles.
I love that. When people don't feel seen, they start to wonder if their effort matters. That goes both ways. Leaders feel this way and team members feel this way. When they don't feel heard, they stop offering perspective. And when they don't feel valued, they eventually disengage.
That's right. So I'm going to ask the question that our listeners might be thinking right now. Isn't this risky? Like opening ourselves up like this, whether it's to a team, whether it's to our peers, it feels really vulnerable. And I think as leaders, we spend a lot of time trying to mitigate our vulnerabilities. People may not like what they see.
That's right.
They might start to second guess our leadership. We might lose credibility. Those are some of the fears that come up for us when we think of being vulnerable as leaders. So for our listeners who may be wrestling with that tension, how do we do this well?
Well, we're familiar with the phrase imposter syndrome, which has become a kind of catch-all way of helping us understand the insecurity we feel in allowing other people to see that we don't have all the answers, that we don't have all the competencies, that we don't have all the intelligence, we don't have all the skills that are even required for our own roles and positions, right? Because as human beings, we sometimes forget that we have to continually grow into new levels of abilities and leadership.
Yeah.
And so in order to tackle this imposter syndrome, I think what I'm about to share, especially for our listeners, may be incredibly helpful. Let's start by saying this. We have to lead by example. We often say that leaders define culture. We cannot ask of our team members or our organization things from them that we are not prepared first to model for them. However, this creates a tension. How much vulnerability is appropriate for leaders to share? That's the big question. So let me offer us a few rules of engagement, because as we were processing this before we jumped on to record the podcast, and I saw that question, I remember thinking, I gotta draw from recent conversations with leaders where this is coming up because it's a very popular issue. and to ask the question, how do I normally coach them through this? What are some of the basic practical handles that I might offer? So for our listeners, free of charge, because there are people paying a lot of money to get this, and you get it for free here on the podcast. Let's go through a few of them. Rule number one, and then I'm going to pause after each one if you want to add a little something, Dawn, okay? Because I know that you're steeped in this in your own coaching relationships. Rule number one, people who are not at your level in an organization cannot fully understand or appreciate the weight that you are carrying, and nor should they. And we shouldn't expect that of them. That's like asking our 12-year-old to really understand and appreciate the fact that we just got fired from our job.
Right.
Or that one of our credit cards, is overdrawn, or that a check bounced, or that, our politician wasn't voted into their office, right? Like we got to be very careful that we do not expect of those that are lower down on the chain of command to fully understand and appreciate the weight that they don't have to carry. That's the main point. It's also really important because if we're not careful, we can begin to share with a desire to get people to feel sad, to feel sorry for us, we start to dip into what we call the victim mindset, right? Where we just want people to look at us and say, oh, poor you. Let's pull out our miniature violin and play you a song and soothe you. And that can lead to really dysfunctional and unhealthy relationships. Rule number two, did you want to say anything about rule number one?
I just want to double down on that fact that as leaders, we cannot be asking our team. Let me rephrase this. When we are trying to build trust, it is not about making people feel sorry for us. We need to ask the question, what do I need to feel seen, to feel heard, and feel valued? And then the second question is this person the appropriate person in this context that can supply that for me?
I love that. And that actually leads us into rule number two, right? So great springboard. Rule number two, discipline and discretion.
Yes.
These are a leader's best friends. Why? Because this is not only part art, but it's also part science. We have to be very intentional about the who, where, when, what, and how of our openness and vulnerability, right? That's really important. So discipline and discretion, the who, where, when, what, and how of our vulnerability. And if we think back on our past experiences where we've opened up to different individuals and either felt burned, or we felt like they betrayed our trust, or we felt they didn't hold our confidence, or whatever, some negative experience, we can almost always reflect back and ask the question, did I honor this filter? Is the person, the who I'm sharing with, the appropriate person to be sharing this with? Where I shared it, at the proverbial office water cooler, or at lunch when there are team members sitting around, or in a meeting with the whole entire executive team, right? The when matters, right? The time of the day that you find somebody in, whether you wait some time before you get some more clarity about what you want to share, the what we actually disclose to others is important. And the how, the tone of voice, the context of our sharing, these things deeply matter. Rule number three, discern your team's capacity to be included in your journey. In the same way that parents are very intentional about what they share with their children based on their age and maturity, we need to operate with the same intentionality with our team members. Now, we got to be careful, listeners, be very careful. We're not trying to provide a condescending, pedantic, kind of mindset toward our team members to say, oh, you're just a little baby, I can't share with you. But I just think really paying attention to that person's kind of emotional, mental capacity, right? Their bandwidth, the maturity that they've demonstrated that would suggest they can appropriately carry with us the weight of what we're sharing without them feeling like they're now responsible for that weight.
Yeah.
Or without treating us like the victim. Very, very important. Anything you want to add to that?
On the last 2 points, the thing that's standing out to me, the step that leaders often skip in this, that I think is a really important guardrail, is what do I actually need, right? That the what and the why of why we're sharing. what am I looking to get? Because that's going to help you with rule number 3, right? What do I need right now? Then that's going to help me answer the question, who should I be sharing this
That's right.
with? How should I be sharing? And as leaders, we often are just running so fast that we don't take that pause.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really crucial step in doing this well.
I love that. I love that. And that's going to come back when we get to the 5th rule. We're still on rule number 4, but when we get to the 5th rule, it's going to help us understand that question you're asking. What do I actually need from the people around me? And to deal with that even more deeply, we'll get to rule 5. But rule number 4, we model healthy openness and vulnerability with our team with the intention, the purpose of building trust and giving them a sense of ownership, inclusion, right? By including our children in some of the affairs of the family household, we do it with the intention of letting them know, hey, we value your place in the family. We want you to know, a certain amount of information so that you can feel engaged and aware and you don't feel caught off guard, right? We have to practice that same thing, same kind of intentional discretion with our team members. So it's to build trust, to increase ownership, not with the intent for others to carry or solve our burdens for us. And here's rule number 5, the final one on the list. Have a coach.
Please.
I know this is a bit self-serving because we have an executive coaching business, but the reality is every one of us, as we look through our lives, if there's an area that we want to grow in, it doesn't matter if it's our physical health, if it's our financial health, if it's our relational health. The truth is, if we want to grow beyond an area that we know how to grow in, we do ourselves a massive favor by seeking the coaching, the mentoring, the partnership of somebody who can help us go to a place that we've not yet been before. Because if we'd been there, we'd know how to get there. We do it on our own.
That's right.
And we've done that for a lot of areas of our life. But I think the older we get, the higher we get in leadership, we start to, I think we rob ourselves of the permission to ask for help.
Yes.
And it's such a simple thing, does require a bit of humility, right? But just to simply ask for help. And so again, have a coach, have a mentor or other confidant who can provide a safe space for us to be messy, because we have to be messy before we can figure it out, clean it up, and to process our struggles so that we can regain our mental and emotional sobriety.
That's so good.
I know. I have a couple more things, but I want to hear what's connecting for you.
Well, so for our listeners, my son is 15 and a half and he's just learning how to drive.
Ooh.
God bless us all.
Just let us know when he's on the road here in San Diego so that we can avoid those streets.
100%. But I'm reminded of this reality that as for our children or as younger people, it is expected that when we don't know how to do something, we are going to engage the services of somebody who can teach us how to do it.
Yeah.
So my son had to get a driving coach. He has to meet with this person who is a character, and that's a whole nother story for another time. But he has to meet with this person to learn the practicalities of how do I go from not being a driver to being a driver. Think about it. We do the same thing when kids are learning to tie their shoes or write their ABCs, like even how to engage socially.
Yeah.
For young people, it is a well-established truth that they are going to need coaching.
Yeah.
And yet, for some reason, when we reach some age, somewhere around like 30, we think that we've surpassed.
We should know it all.
We should know how to do it all.
We should figure it out on our own.
And so asking for help feels like a weakness.
Yeah.
Engaging somebody to teach us or train us feels like, I should know how to do this already.
Absolutely.
And I don't get why that is.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, coach me, teach me. There's plenty I don't know how to do. And there are no shortcuts, but I'm going to figure it out a lot faster if I can watch somebody else show me how to do it.
Yeah, let's just say this for this particular podcast episode. If our listeners, if you've not heard anything else, if you take nothing else away with you from this podcast, take this away. It's okay to ask for help. As a matter of fact, the leaders that avoid what we call the proverbial plateau, where we stop growing, we stall out, it is almost always tied to an unwillingness to ask for help. All right, let me share a couple more things, and then we're gonna get into some real
Yeah.
life stories with our
Okay.
clients. So let's just own this. This whole proposition feels risky, right? Because by practicing honesty and vulnerability, or just some measure of openness, we're entrusting ourselves. And as they say, don't throw your pearls before swine. That's an old Jewish proverb, and it's just a reminder, like, hey, you can't just disclose everything to everybody, right? You don't take your clothes off around everybody. At least for me, when I go to the pool, I'm very careful. But honestly, it is a risky endeavor. Anytime we open ourselves up, there's a chance people won't respond the way that we hope.
Yeah.
But here's the bigger risk: if we don't build this kind of trust with some other folks, we end up carrying leadership and all of its burdens alone. And quite frankly, it's just too much. Most of the leaders we work with are just absolutely overwhelmed in the deep end of the pool, submerged, desperately grasping for the side of the pool to like save themselves. And once they invite us in, they're just like, oh my gosh, why did I try to do this alone for so long? If we don't build this trust, we will do this alone, and that's what erodes credibility faster than anything, which is a leader who looks strong on the outside, but inside is drowning. The best leaders aren't the ones who never show weakness. They're the ones who create enough trust that people know they're human, they're approachable, and they're steady even when things are hard. That kind of openness doesn't weaken leadership, it deepens it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's dig into some real life stories, because like we just said, some of the fastest way to learn things is to see how they've played out for other people. So I know you have a couple examples of where you've seen this with clients recently.
Yes, 2 different examples to kind of juxtapose and compare and contrast, and I'm hoping our listeners will kind of immediately determine, maybe they resonate with one over the other, or if I'm honest, I resonate with both of these.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're very careful to protect the identities of our clients because they are entrusting their lives and their leadership to us, and so we're very careful with that. But all of our clients are so gracious to want the rest of the world to know the blessing and breakthroughs that they're experiencing in this work. All right, so our first story is of a leader we've worked with for some time now, and they're at the top of the pile. They are, in fact, the CEO, president, owner, operator of a very large organization here in the United States. And over the past 3 or 4 years, with our help, they've built an incredible executive team around them to partner with this individual in carrying the weight of the organization to scale it up. I mean, they've just been on a fast track toward massive and significant growth. But here's what's interesting. One of the things I began to notice a few months ago was that over and over in one-on-one coaching calls with this individual, I heard them starting to share of their frustrations with different executive team members and difficult conversations and ways they were stepping on his toes. And before you know it, then a few calls later, I hear about, well, I feel lonely, I feel isolated, I feel overwhelmed. And I say, well, hey, I'm just curious. Do you think there might be a connection between the way that you have been kind of subtly distancing yourself from your executive team and the feelings of loneliness? Because if I remember correctly, a year ago, as you built this incredible executive team, all you did was celebrate how you felt partnership. You felt like you were finally a part of a team. You felt like, you weren't just carrying the weight of the whole company on your own shoulders, but there were other people to shoulder that with you. Yeah. What do you think happened? And through a variety of conversations, they were able to recognize, yeah, you know what? Under pressure, as I have felt irked or hurt or toes stepped on by different executive team members, I felt like that broke trust.
Yeah.
And over time I started to withdraw, and now I feel isolated. I said, okay, great. So what are we going to do about it? What do you want to do about it? And in that conversation, they realized, gosh, you're right. I'm actually creating this scenario for myself. Like I've undermined my own sense of confidence by withdrawing from my team. I said, great. So then they put a plan in place to re-engage with team members, to have the hard conversations that they needed to have to reconcile any conflict, outstanding conflict. And what's amazing is, as they're still in the process, but as this leader does these simple things of reconnecting, rebuilding trust with individual team members on the executive team, guess what? I can see it in the meetings, because I meet with the entire executive team, including the owner, on a regular basis. I can see this person show up to those Zoom calls with a different body language and facial expressions and energy and excitement to engage with those people. So that's one story.
Yeah.
The second story, and then I'd love to hear kind of things that are percolating for you. The second story is of another kind of leader who's in what we would call the celebrity space of our culture and society. A ridiculously talented individual, and with as is true with many creative types.
Yeah.
Right. They tend to have like just a higher antenna for emotional sensitivity, which I think is a beautiful thing. They feel things more deeply. Everything just seems more powerful and bigger
Vibrant,
and brighter and vibrant, right? And that goes for the highs and the lows. So a lot of creatives, and if you're a creative out there, we love you because we need you to bring color to this very drab world that we all live in. But the reality is the high highs and low lows, it not only become overwhelming for the individual, but for the people around them. Yeah. Just making sense? But here's what happened was, as we've been working together, what I realized is when they feel overwhelmed by the pressures of their own responsibilities, they would very quickly find a large number of people in their community, in their kind of relational circle, to go and grab coffee and lunch and dinners and chats with, so that they could kind of pour out the sorrows and the woes of what they're experiencing. And as we started processing this, I said, I asked the question, do you think you're sharing with them so that they can help you carry the burden, or do you think you're sharing with them so that you think they'll carry that burden for you? And I remember the long pause. And then he said, if I'm honest, I want them to throw me a pity party. If I'm honest, I want them to solve my problems. I want them to soothe me. I want them to carry the burden. I want them to make me not feel afraid or insecure or threatened, in all these different areas. I said, yeah. I said, well, the first order of business as we grow as leaders is just practicing self-awareness, owning that this is what I'm doing. And what was the net effect? The net effect is the people around him were beginning to actually see his victim mentality as an incredible expression of weakness. So this is where he was oversharing. He wasn't practicing discipline and discretion. He wasn't paying attention to the who, what, where, when, how. Right. And so because he was really, what he was looking for is for somebody to come along and just kind of hold his hand and tell him,
pat him on the head.
And it's not that that's always bad or wrong, except when we're looking for people to carry our burdens for us instead of them supporting us as we carry our own unique burden. Dear listener, as you're hearing this, I'm sure that something in your life is relevant and connecting. And I would strongly encourage you, pay attention to where you might be either unwilling to connect with people and to share openly and honestly and vulnerably, or where are you oversharing and the impact and effect that has on our teams and our communities?
Yeah. So I just want to encourage our listeners to take that time, actually process, sit down and do the work of, am I feeling seen? Am I feeling heard? Am I feeling valued? And where might I strategically pull some levers so that I'm calibrating that correctly? Because interestingly, in your second example of oversharing, I would assume that person still wasn't getting what they needed. That's why they were running to so many different people to continue to share, because they were not satisfying that whatever that gap was for them.
Yeah, for them internally, for them personally.
Exactly.
100%.
So when we do that first work of what do I actually need, it really means that we're going to step forward in this in a more measured and productive way. And unfortunately, most of us, me included, I'm too willing to skip that step because I'm too busy doing other things that seem important.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So now this is the part where we normally transition into kind of practical application, but I think this episode has been just chock full of practical handles that we all can lean into and leverage as we consider the way that we're engaging, whether it's our friends, our family, our teammates, our coworkers, to determine, are we driving ourselves into isolation because we're not willing to share and be open? Are we driving ourselves into internal isolation because we're oversharing and never really satisfying our need to feel seen, heard, and valued? And what do we need to recalibrate so that I love the question you asked earlier, so that we're really paying attention to what do I need? And if you don't know what you need, get a coach.
That's right.
Just get a coach. Get somebody who can help you begin to discern those things so that you as a leader can take back the power of personal responsibility for getting what you need from yourself and the people around you.
Yeah.
Listen, our listeners, we love you. We're so grateful for the time and energy that you spend with us. We want to add value to your life at every level as we have these leadership conversations, because remember, every person is a leader. If today's conversation hit home, share it with another leader that you know who might be carrying the load in silence. It's one of the best ways to remind each other that we are not alone in this work.
Yes. And if we could ask you a favor, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review. It really helps other leaders find this podcast. And we'll just take the moment right now to thank you all, because you have been doing that. And our podcast is performing amazingly.
It's growing.
It's growing.
Into places we never thought possible.
That's
it's
right.
Unbelievable, because you've left reviews, because you've subscribed, because you hit the like button, pow, 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 whatever the words that people use out there. We're super grateful.
That's right. And if you're looking for more in-depth, just time in some of these, if you want to like spend some time going deeper in some of these areas, we're going to be holding monthly virtual masterminds. So you can head to mpwrcoaching.com/masterminds to see all the information for what's coming up next and sign up. We'd love to see you there.
And join us.
Join us.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear the questions, the conversations, the reflections.
We want to see your faces.
Yes. We want to see their faces, because they normally just see our faces.
Exactly.
I like that. All right, guys, next week we'll take this a step further and talk about the pressure we feel as leaders to have all the answers. Until next time.